residential appraisals. But this is going to be an opportunity where you can gain really all your experience requirement for licensed and certified residential and 75% for certified general. So that's big news. I'd like to share that. Where are we at?
I think it's going to be like this. You're just going to be basically Skyping with John.
And we're live, by the way.
So what are the other folks going to see?
They are seeing it switching back and forth. So we on the appraiser side are seeing it switching back and forth.
I don't guess
Yeah,
you
so
can
Brian,
Yes.
you guys are live. Why don't you start treating it like a warm up, because people are already starting to come in.
Are
So
people coming in? Yes,
yes, they're
there will be.
Hey guys, if anybody's joining in, and I apologize for the technical difficulties that we've had this morning. We're going to wait a few more minutes before we actually get started because we have more and more folks coming in. Hey, Sam, I need you for a minute.
Okay.
So what I want to do while we wait for our entire audience to catch up to this new link and where we are right now, John, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and if you don't mind, go ahead and tell folks how they can reach out to you and contact you if they have questions or want to talk to you outside of this webinar.
So my name is John Dingman. I am Chief Appraiser for Landmark Network, which is an appraisal management company. You can definitely reach me at my email address there, which would be jdingaman@landmarknetwork.com. I also I still serve for the Coalition of Arizona Appraisers as past president and a member. And I currently serve as president of the National Association of Appraisers, which is a national organization serving boots on the ground residential appraisers.
Okay, John, and that's what I really want to focus on. John is the president of the National Association of Appraisers, and as a consequence, he is kind of traveling around the country, finding out what's going on in our industry. It looks like this is behind a little bit, as you can see. So
I believe it will be.
That's why I really wanted John involved today, because he's going to be able to share a lot of what's going on in the industry right now. And guys, I think we're having some problems with the video. Ben and Sam are in the background. We went to a new system, and I apologize that we're having some problems here. So if I can get the word from Sam or Ben that we're ready to roll and go ahead and get started, we will. Otherwise, we'll continue to wait a couple of minutes as some other folks start joining us. Like I said, we do have some folks online now, John, but because of the link issue,
We just can't. You're just going to be Skyping with him, but we can see it on our end how many viewers are in, and say hello to the two people that are watching. But I don't think that you can see it on your end how many people are popping in.
Right.
I just don't think you can.
Okay. 1 second, John.
Yes, sir.
So I really don't have any control. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, people that are watching right now. Okay. So just Skype with John, and
So when somebody asks a question, I got nothing.
we can send it to you.
And how do I receive that?
We would send it to you in a chat. So Appraiser e-learning would send you a chat.
Hey, Brian, we lost your audio. Lost your audio, Brian. And your video. Looks like we are live, folks, but Brian and Appraiser e-learning is having a little bit of trouble here. Brian and Appraiser e-learning is having a
Can you see me?
little bit of trouble here.
Um,
You're back, Sam.
can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Perfect. All right.
Brian and Appraiser e-learning is having a
Can you see me?
little bit of trouble here. You're back, Sam.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Perfect. All right.
Brian and Appraiser e-learning is having
Can you see me?
a little bit of trouble here. You're back, Sam. I can hear you just fine. Perfect.
How is that?
I'm having fun, John. Are you?
This is the best, Brian.
I'm just going to record John saying that over and over again. I love it.
Hey, John.
Hey, Sam.
We had the link open in another tab. And so we had the video. Oh, is that still happening?
YouTube broadcast open on another tab.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I think we got it.
Okay.
We're not hearing the audio reverb. It was open in another tab.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Cool.
We're ready now.
I believe so.
Can you hear me now?
Brian,
Guys, I'm so sorry. This is the third webinar we've done in 3 months, and this is the only time we've experienced such problems. And I think the issue is we went to a different system that's supposed to be working fantastic and great without incident, and clearly that didn't happen this morning. So I want to apologize. We'll get these kinks worked out, and next month I assure you we won't have these problems. So again, I'm just going to start and reboot and start from the beginning. I'd like to welcome John Dingman, my guest this morning. He is the president of the National Association of Appraisers, as well as the chief appraiser for Landmark. John, say hello to everyone.
hello, everyone. And boy, look at the time. I probably have to go, Brian.
It's time to go. You got some appraisals to write or review, right? So I'd like to thank everybody that's been very patient and has joined us this morning. We're excited to be here. And we're talking about some things that are going on. You know, our first broadcast was in January, and we had the appraiser coach on and Craig Capella on. Last month we had Hamp Thomas, and this month we've got John with the NAA, and also not only a chief appraiser for an AMC. He has a history of being a boots on the ground appraiser, just like all of you out there. So we're happy that he's here, and we're really going to focus on him a little bit more so in his role as president of the National Association of Appraisers, because what we're here to talk about today is what's going on, what's new, what's around the corner, and John's the man to answer those questions. So the first thing I want to do is just jump back over to John and say, John, what's on your upcoming calendar? Where are you going to be next? What's going on?
Well, let's see, Brian. Usually my itinerary is quite full. I guess the last month or so it's been a little quiet. Next week I will be in Tampa, Florida. I will be at the Aero Conference, which is preceded by Appraisal Foundation meetings. The Aero Conference is the Association of Appraisal Regulatory Officials. That is your state organizations where they'll meet. It's always a good group. I went to my first meeting in the fall in DC. The spring meeting again is in Tampa, but they'll cover things like developing the next generation of appraisers, the future of regulatory boards and the impact of the North Carolina Dental Association issues, accepting mass experience for credit, the AQB criteria. They have an AMC breakout session. It's also where folks like you who serve as an investigator get your investigator training for the state regulatory agencies. And it looks like David Bunton and Jim Park will also be talking about modernizing appraisals. I'm hopeful that Fannie Mae will be there as well. There's some discussion about fingerprinting, photographic fingerprinting and things of that nature, but there's always good things to learn there. Certainly you can see the direction that the states are taking as far as disciplinary action or their investigations are concerned. I'm sure when you were in training, you pick up little tidbits from investigators across the country, and maybe that's something you start focusing on in your own work. So
Yeah. So
that's one thing.
Just to jump in here, John, to let everyone know, AARO, again, as John said, is the Association of Appraisal Regulatory Officials. That's AARO. And so it's kind of like a club or an association of your regulator. A lot of the executive directors are members, and they really play a critical role. It's kind of a networking. They do a little bit of everything, as John said. They co-sponsor with the Appraisal Foundation for investigator training, and that's level 1, level 2, and level 3 now, investigator training. And I learned a lot at those events, and we may share those with you, some of that with you a little bit today. John, you mentioned the criteria, and I want to talk about that because the Appraisal Foundation just came out with their 3rd exposure draft on March 15th, 2017. And so that was just really a few days ago. So this is kind of hot off the press, if you will. And that's going to impact a lot of appraisers across the country. So let's talk about that for a little bit. And I want to pause and let everyone know that's viewing, if you have any questions, normally they come right into me, and I'm going to have to rely on Ben and Sam a little bit today. But if you have any questions during our broadcast here, go ahead and shoot over a question, and we'll try and answer those during the course of this webinar. All right. So let's talk about this March 15th exposure draft, if you will. John, tell us a little bit about some of the major changes, and we'll take this one by one. Let's talk about the alternative track, if you will. Tell me what you know about that.
Well, they're looking at some alternative tracks for appraisers, Brian, to gain their licensing or their education. As you know, in January of 2015, the requirement for a 4-year degree was put in place, and there has been some heartburn over that, particularly as it relates to licensed appraisers upgrading, etc. Again, a 4-year college degree, depending on which side of the debate you're on, it's either a good thing or a bad thing. And that's really where it's been. And I guess the driving force behind this is the other debate, and that's related to whether there's a shortage or not. And I'm not so sure that we need to get into that debate. There's 2 sides to that as well, but I think this is in response to some of that. But it is a reduction based on the exposure draft to remove the 4-year degree requirement and to give some alternative tracks. You know, the NAA did provide some opinions to the AQB. We had a sole opinion, just one, and our concept and idea was to have licensed residential appraisers who are in good standing with their state, no ethical violations presented to their state board. They've completed their hours for certification, and they can complete the exam that they could elevate their license to certified residential. That does not look like it is on this exposure draft again, but nonetheless, it looks like they are making progress, Brian.
Yeah, and let's for just a second there, John. Let's talk about that for a moment. Let the viewers know, what is an exposure draft, and is it something that the typical appraiser, the boots on the ground appraiser, can participate in if they like? I mean, we're all very opinionated as appraisers. So if we've got some appraisers out there that want to voice their opinion, can they do that? Will the Appraisal Foundation listen to what they have to say?
Every appraiser can voice their opinion, and as far as I know, any member of the public can voice their opinion, and the Appraisal Foundation does listen. So your comments will be posted online. It's for review. They take every single one of them very seriously. If you go to one of their meetings, they maybe even refer to one of the letters. And you can also attend one of their meetings and voice your opinion out loud, if you will, instead of just in writing. But they do. The exposure drafts are really an opportunity for us, stakeholders and appraisers, et cetera, to review what their thoughts are with the direction that they're going and give our own opinions on whether or not we like it or we don't like it, or maybe something else that we'd like to see them do or consider. It is not final. So their final draft, I'm not sure how many more exposures they'll go through. I'm sure this is the last one. But they'll make their final decision and they'll enact the criteria, basically, in this particular case. It's also what the standards board uses, the same process that they go through for USPAC and any changes there.
Great. The thing is, and I just want to let everyone viewing know that they welcome your comments. When they make a change to USPAC, for that matter, they submit out a exposure draft, and that exposure draft is asking folks for comments. So they want your comments and feedback, and they value those. Dennis Badger told me one time his group spent 8 hours talking about a comment letter that was received. So they do value your opinion, and you can make a difference. And that's why we highly recommend you get involved, whether it's this association or that association or this club. If you got a state association you want to join, and certainly the national association, which will provide you some information at the end of the day, or you can reach out to John if you're interested in maybe not only becoming a member, but getting involved. We need to come together as appraisers. Larry Disney once told me that motorcycle groups are more organized than appraisers. And I believe that. Look at all the motorcycle rallies around the country. How often you're around 20, 25 appraisers? Typically it's once a year when you're in a CE class. So this is an opportunity for you to come together. So let's get back to the exposure draft just for a minute. There are 3 different options now, instead of having that college degree for a certified residential level. All right. I think John touched on that just a little bit, but the options are actually that you can obviously have a degree. Number 2, you can take specific college courses in lieu of a degree, or you could actually CLEP the exam. You can take the exam, see if you can successfully navigate that exam. So again, this isn't final, it hasn't passed yet per se, but it looks like there's going to be some aggressive changes. And one of the things you mentioned a moment ago, John, whether or not we have a shortage of appraisers. And again, that could be an all-day debate in and of itself, so we don't want to go there. But I will say we have fewer appraisers in this country today than what we had just a few years ago. I mean, that's a mathematical fact. And then let me say this. I was in a class just yesterday in Lexington. I had 30 people in my class, and I asked for a show of hands of who've been in the business less than 5 years. As you can guess, no hands went up. I asked how many have been in the business less than 10 years. Maybe a couple of hands went up. I asked the same question the day before, similar results. As I travel around the country and teach, when I have these course offerings, very seldom do we have new appraisers in these classes. So if there's not a shortage today, there likely will be in the near future. And something's got to give. I mean, we're in a world of instant gratification, and clients aren't going to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks for an appraisal. It's just not going to happen. So we're either going to have to open the gates and let more folks in and incentivize and have incentives for those folks to come in, or we're going to change how we do business. And that may happen. Desktop appraisals are right around the corner and so on. So that's the thing with that. And then the other interesting part for me in this exposure, John, is on page 14. So if you can give a quick overview, and I'll chime in with you on that. Historically, there's been a provision that 50% of your experience can come from non-traditional appraisals. So talk about that on page 14, John, if you don't mind, how folks can actually secure experience in a new way.
Well, it looks like there's different modules, Brian, that folks can use. They have 3 different modules where they can gain experience hours. To me, what's more important is the reduction in hours of experience. I mean, it's literally a reduction by almost 1,000 hours, right? So instead of 2,500 hours for certified residential, it's 1,500 hours or completion of modules 1 and 2. And those are practical modules that the appraiser would go through. So I think it's pretty impressive.
On the screen, John, I don't know if you can see it at your end.
I got it.
Okay, so Ben put that up, and you can see the first paragraph under the chart says, currently the criteria allows for 50% of the experience required to be obtained for completing assignments with non-traditional clients. And now look what they're proposing. That these practicum courses, or the modules, if you will, would qualify for 100% of the required experience for a licensed residential and certified residential level, and 75% for the certified general. I mean, that's huge. Look at the chart there, all right? If you're seeking an LR or licensed residential, if you could either have 1,000 hours of experience or you can complete module 1. And you can go right down the list there. For CR, it's 1,500 hours of experience or completion of modules 1 and 2. I mean, this is really big news.
It's pretty impressive, to say the least.
You know, one of the challenges that I hear from a lot of appraisers wanting to advance from a certified residential to a certified general, number one is they have a hard time finding a mentor or a sponsor to take them under their wing, and number two is the trouble or the non-availability of getting those experience hours. And when I tell them, in the past I've been able to tell them, 50% of your experience can be, non-assignments, non-clients, if you will. And so you get competent in appraising hospitality. Nothing would prevent you from going down the street and appraising 2 or 3 hotels without a client, without a traditional assignment, if you will. You're doing it for the mere ability to gain experience hours, and they light up. And now we're seeing it's not just 50% as to what's proposed, it's 75% or 100% for the licensed residential or certified residential.
It's definitely outside the box thinking, Brian.
All right, Sam or Ben, if you could run in here real quick. Let's see here, see if I can figure this out here.
There is a question up there from Danny, Brian. It's unrelated to our discussion, but
Go ahead.
Danny's asking what appraisal software is best for mobile applications. Danny, I have a response that usually that I guide appraisers with regards to software, that whatever software works best for me does not necessarily work best for everyone else. So I think you really need to look at what works best for you. There's all kinds of ways to work with different mobile applications within an iPad or some other mobile device, whether it's photos, whether it's using OneNote or Evernote or something like that. And so really just try them out. Talk to your peers about the pluses and minuses, and make a sound decision based on how you want to approach it from there. My guess is all of the software providers, Jeff Bradford just and ClickForms just came out with Inspect a Lot. They're all trying to work towards advancing the appraiser into mobile applications, mobile appraising, and being able to access their data, their reports, etc., from anywhere that they sit, whether that's in a coffee shop, in their car, or at their desk in their office.
I will say this. I have an office in Owensboro, Kentucky, and we just opened an office in Nashville. All right. We've hired 5, it's hard to keep track. We've got 5 appraisers. I have 3 certified residential appraisers and 2 certified general. We have 2 appraisers in our analytic department. We have a trainee and associate in our research division. we've got a reviewer, and we've got an admin person. So however many that adds up to. But Danny, what we do is every appraiser that's out in the field, all 5, use a tablet in the field. All right, so it's a great question you ask. I used to use ACI as a big user of ACI all the way back to the days of DOS when it was MCS. And I did start using some of the software, and that on the iPad, there's an application called Phoenix that I use with that, and it worked pretty good. The software we use for our Nashville office is Total, and we use that software, and we use an iPad. And my guys, use a case with a lanyard around their neck, and so they can actually have that iPad just there with hands-free operation filling that out. The nice thing about that is you're automating the process. By the time they get in their car, they can hit a button, and that data transfers back to our office where our data entry clerks can take charge.
Brian, I don't know if you froze. I'm assuming Brian will be right back. Back?
Nope. Well, Sam, I'm here. Do you hear me?
All right, I hear you.
Okay. Well, here, Brian's coming right back.
A little break there. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened. Again, we've obviously got some bugs to work out. We didn't have these problems in January or February. So again, I apologize for the difficulties we've had. What else is hot and new, John?
Well, let's see. In May, you have the NACOW meeting, which is the North American Council of Appraisal Organizations. That'll be in West Palm Beach. That will preempt the Board of Trustees meeting from the Appraisal Foundation. So I will be in attendance there. The NAA is a member of TAPEC. So we do have a member, Mike Brunson, who is a founding member of the National Association of Appraisers, will obviously be in attendance. And all board members will be in attendance. That's when we're going to have our in-person meeting, board meeting. And members and non-members are welcome to attend those board meetings as well. They're open to the public. The North American Council of Appraisal Organizations is also, it's an interesting group. I have never been party to it. So I'm looking forward to attending, but it is all of the appraisal organizations. So it's NAFA, it's ASA, it's AI, it's NAA, etc. Together to discuss the appraisal issues that we face and discuss, between the two of us, for example, but in major groups. And it has the opportunity to be quite influential, I believe, in our industry.
Great. John, talk about the Appraisal Summit a little bit. This is an opportunity, some of the meetings that you're talking about, unfortunately, are kind of closed where the practicing appraiser doesn't have an opportunity to attend. I know the Arrow meeting may have a little window where it's open to the public per se, but for the most part, you can't go to an Arrow meeting unless you're a board member or an investigator or educator or something along those lines. It's kind of a closed door issue. I know for investigator training, you're not allowed to do that unless you have a special invite. So let's talk for a moment about opportunities for the practicing appraiser to come and participate and hear from industry experts, where can they go do that?
Well, the Appraisal Summit, which will be in Las Vegas, I believe it's and it should be like October 31st through November 3rd. I believe it's a 4-day event, but 2-day conference. Today is usually some continuing education and some meetings and things like that. We have appraisers helping appraisers on that day. So rather than hearing from Danny, for example, hearing from the likes of Alamode or ACI telling them why their product is best, it will be a boots on the ground field appraiser. Other appraisers know what mobile applications work for them without selling them. We think that's pretty neat. The second day is continuing education as well, different courses. I believe, Brian, in the past, you've taught some of those classes. And that is the day when the NAA holds their meetings. We take advantage of the opportunity since we're there, and we serve as a co-host of that conference, where we have our membership meeting, board meeting, we elect new officers. And we also have what's called a state leadership group. This is where the Board of Governors, which are the state associations and coalitions that serve on our board, participate and chair or run a meeting that includes all appraisers, regardless of whether they belong to a state organization or not. And all state organizations from across the country participate. I think we had around 20 different states represented last year. And we focus on some of the issues that they're facing individually. Where can we help as an organization? Where can other states help? And is there anything that those state organizations believe the NAA should be driving forward? So those are 2 days that lead up to the conference. And then the conference is really 14 hours of continuing education where they're going to hear from the likes of, in the past, Jim Park or David Bunton from the Appraisal Association and the Appraisal Subcommittee, or they're going to hear from Zach Dawson from Fannie Mae or somebody from FHA or VA. They're going to hear from usually a state regulator to discuss issues there. They're always going to hear from somebody in the E&O world. Peter Christensen usually gives a word from the lawyer. And then we divide into a couple of tracks. One is a management track and one is an appraiser track, Brian. The appraiser track is based solely for boots on the ground field appraisers. It covers things like market conditions. Woody Fincham will be talking this year about public records and assessors' offices. And if you want to get into that side of our business, alternative valuations, all of those things that really relate to us as field appraisers. And then we have a management track, and that was developed as an opportunity for those appraisers, quality control or review appraisers for lenders, banks, HUD, wherever they serve, to go get education or seek out continuing education that's really relative to the work that they're doing, whether it's regarding compliance or things of that nature. They may be less concerned about how to measure a home than a field appraiser would be. We found it to be quite successful. People are a little bit more open to asking questions and raising hands. And then
they feel more comfortable in large groups. You have 300 people in a group, and so we feel a little bit more protected from some of these bad guys out there, I guess. Hey, real quick, talk about the vendors that are there. I mean, not only do you hear some fantastic speakers. I know every year I've been, I think I've been to every one except one. You have members of the FBI there talking about appraisers that have gotten in trouble with the FBI. And guys, by the way, I'll share, and it's a little embarrassing. It's my state, good old Commonwealth of Kentucky. There was a Lexington appraiser that was just indicted. And, there's a little news story about, and I'm not going to give any names, but he was actually using unlicensed folks going out and looking at the property, okay, and then signing as though he did that and not disclosing. And you can actually use unlicensed folks as long as it's permissible under state law. Kentucky's a voluntary state. You couldn't do that in Tennessee per se, But you can do it in Kentucky as long as they either sign on the left or you list them out the certification and provide a summary of what they did. The problem was he was acting as though it was he that did everything and not mentioning them at all. So that's a real problem. But the FBI is at the summit, so you can hear about appraisers that get in trouble and some of the various things. It's quite interesting. But talk about the vendors that are there. They can actually meet some of these folks from ACI or Total or Marshall and Swift or VA, or talk about that just a little bit. Dustin's there.
Yeah, so Brian, the vendors overall at the Appraisal Summit have been universally really geared around appraiser solutions, software vendors, and software solution providers. I think in recent past, you've had the start of some other vendors, like you said. VA has been there historically. We've had HUD there in years past. And now you're starting to see a few AMCs show up. Those folks thought it was quite beneficial whether they had some appraisers sign up or they got to meet in person for the first time some appraisers that are on their vendor panels. But overall, it's a lot of software solution providers. So for example, Danny, if he was interested in the mobile applications, they'll all be there. They're all running demos. They have them on the screens to do screen sharing, etc. And it's a great opportunity to ask the questions and see it working in action. And oftentimes they have some good deals as well if you're signing up with their service or trying their service out through a conference like the Appraisal Summit. So it's a huge advantage for appraisers. And even those folks have expressed to me that, hey, look, they're meeting their appraisers that already use their software or their services. And again, to meet them in person, face-to-face is always a pleasure for those folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up with Danny. I mean, he asked us, what's the best software? He could actually see some in working action out there. So you could actually talk to the folks that administer that from the technology side and help you. And then you can make an informed decision. The Teresa Walker, the NAA, and additionally Columbia Institute have done a really good job with that, and I've been fortunate to be a part of that. So, and it's in Vegas, right? It's in Vegas, so it'll take a couple of days. What a great place to have a working vacation, mini vacation, if you like. John, we've got a few more minutes, and I know we actually still have some folks joining on. I was debating on whether to end this a little early with all the technical difficulties we've had, but let's just finish out and let me ask you, what do you think the future of appraising looks like? I mean, where are we going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now, or will we be? Ever since I've gotten in this business, which was just before licensing, ever so often you hear, well, we're going to be out of business. They're going to get rid of appraisers. They're going to get rid of the residential appraisers. AVMs are going to take over. Most recently, just a couple of years ago, big data is coming out. UAD, Fannie Mae's stealing our data. We won't need appraisers anymore. And if we do need appraisers, what's that going to look like? I mean, I saw an article the other day that talked about the lone wolf. Most appraisers are like the lone wolf. We're single man or single woman shops. Where do you see us right around the corner? One thing's for certain, things are going to change. I mean, folks, if you don't believe that, look in the mirror. Things are going to change whether you like it or not. So, John, what kind of changes can we anticipate right around the corner?
Well, Brian, I haven't been in the business as long as you have, or for that matter, as long as most appraisers have been. You talked early on a little bit about the age of the appraiser, the people entering the business. And we talked a little bit about the degree requirements. And with the degree requirement, the assumption is already that somebody's at least 21 years of age, right? And that's when they're graduating from college. The thing that really stuck with me last year in attending the Aero conference was Jim Park sharing the information about the number of people taking the exams. And it wasn't just the number of people taking the exams. They had bifurcated that into age groups. And the age groups from 18 to 29 or something like that, or 18 to 25, was nearly well, it was a very, very small number, and I think less than what you can count on one hand. And so I look at it from a different perspective. As you know, Brian, folks don't necessarily, but you do. I'm a very forward-thinking, positive-thinking person. I'm always looking at the glass as half full, right, as opposed to half empty. And I think for a lot of folks, they probably just need to change the direction of their thinking, start thinking a little outside the box, and how can we evolve as appraisers and change with the market? Because as you said, we are going to change. You mentioned a couple of things, big data, for example. All of these things are hot topics and open for debate. I would say big data serves us well in many facets of our lives. I watch a person get out of a cab in Chicago, walk down the Michigan Avenue, and they haven't picked their head up. They're walking down, looking at their cell phone, looking at Yelp, looking at the menus and photos of the food, reviews to see which restaurant they want to go to. Where in the past we walked down the street and used our nose to smell,
Right.
and tried to look at who was in the restaurants and who wasn't. So that's big data, right? And big data, I suppose, I understand the concern from appraisers in using the data. They are the clients. They are the ones who are paying for it. It's technically theirs once we deliver the report. But anyways, there's an argument for both sides of it. I'm not all that concerned personally. What I do hear from lenders, particularly after the last meltdown, right? And I'm not talking about the mortgage loan originators or the realtors involved in the sales transactions, where, quite honestly, most of them would probably like it if appraisers went away. The appraisal and or the real estate agents probably feel like we're an impediment to the process. But the credit risk officers, the owners of these banks and lenders, they are looking for an appraiser to validate the collateral risk, and they're asking for appraisals. I was visiting with one lender, Brian, after the property inspection waiver announcement, which has been in existence for a long time anyways, but nonetheless with the new announcement from Fannie Mae. And of course, the mortgage loan originators across the organization were giddy, happy. This is cool. We don't need an appraisal. They did some research and calculated over the last 3 years how many loans they completed would have qualified for a property inspection waiver, and it was less than 1% of their loans. And even then, they thought, well, we probably still would ask for an appraisal. And so I think those organizations still want us to participate in this component of the transaction. And I do think that there's other opportunities. Assume for a minute, as a devil's advocate, the lenders are just going to do away with appraisers. I think consumers at the end of the day will still want a reassurance personally or for themselves that they're doing the right thing and their home is worth what the lender believes it to be. And so I think there is a future for appraisers if you're forward thinking, positive thinking, and thinking outside the box for ourselves rather than allowing our industry partners to think outside the box for us.
So what do you think though, John, so let's agree that appraisers probably aren't ever going to go away. All right. To some degree, we as appraisers are trying to do something that a computer could never do. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to measure the immeasurable. I mean, we're actually trying to measure human behavior. Okay. But what does an appraiser 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now look like? What's their office look like? Or are we going to be sending Google cars out, driverless cars out to go snap our photos for us? so that we don't have to go out there. I know a couple of agricultural specialists. They appraise only farms in Western Kentucky. And I know during the inspection or observation, whatever you want to call it, they fly a drone over the farm. I mean, that's what they're using for their inspection protocol. So they're using that technology. You know, I hate the requirement of looking in the crawl space or head and shoulders at least or whatever. Why can't I put a camera on a little remote control car and drive it around the perimeter of that crawl space? I'll probably get a better look at it. Where do you think we're going to be in the future as far as appraisers and their activities and what we do? I mean, desktop appraisals are really getting popular, and I'm finding that more and more lenders are wanting those, depending on the credit risk, obviously. But I've even heard that there may be some thoughts of Fannie Mae looking at that in the near future.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Brian. It's technology, and I think everybody's looking at leveraging technology to speed up the process, and not just to speed it up, but as you pointed out, maybe to be a little bit more thorough. Can you use and leverage technology to do that? And they looked in the past. I think there was some introduction or concept of utilizing insurance companies to complete the cost approach for you and be able to forward that data to appraisers. They're the ones that have all the cost data anyways, and they're the ones using that component more so than the appraiser, the lender, particularly for residential. Again, I think it's the idea of leveraging and using technology and understanding where we can use it. You mentioned Google cars driving around and taking comp photos for you or something like that. Right. It's ironic that we have still today, regardless of your position, regardless of what you think about the comparable photos and the use of MLS photos, a group of appraisers out there that believe we should go take those photos personally, and you have another contingency of appraisers that believe we should be able to just use MLS photos. Is when the concept is presented to most appraisers, for example, that, hey, we'll use Google cars photos for you. You can then use that photo in your report and disclose it. There's usually an allergic reaction from the appraiser saying, well, wait a minute, you're taking my job away. I envision the appraisers being able to do in 5 years, and that is the valuation components within the appraisal itself and focusing their energy there rather than driving all over town, expending a lot of time and energy on the interstate highway or on streets at a stoplight. And so there really is no reason we can't in our favor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, John, we're going to wrap things up. I appreciate you being here today. Obviously, we've had some challenges with the video, audio, and just the whole day. So I want to apologize for anyone that's watching the webinar. I want to apologize to you, John, and I want to go ahead and get you on the calendar to come back when we have all these technical difficulties ironed out so that we don't have these problems. Let everyone know how to get in touch with you again if they have any questions about the NAA, if they have any questions about the Appraisal Summit Expo, if they want to pick your brain as a chief appraiser for a large AMC in the industry. How do folks get in touch with you again?
So they can reach me at jdingaman@landmarknetwork.com. That would be my work email address for Landmark Network. They can also email me at president@naappraisers.org. Email for the National Association of Appraisers. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that people have. If I don't have an answer, I'll always forward it to the appropriate person that can answer that question for an individual. But I try to keep an open door policy on that kind of stuff.
Great, great. John, thanks again for being here. Again, I look forward to having you back real soon. For all those viewing, check your email a little later. You're going to get a little video from me thanking you for being here and being patient with us. And who knows, I might give you a little gift on top of that for bearing with us today. Thanks again. Thanks my team for getting me through this day. And we look to get back together real soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody.